According to data from YouTube, only a fraction of the people watching these videos are subscribed. So if you end up liking this video, subscribe. Alright, now I'm gonna need you to take this, and this, I heard Tucker say, and I saw a futuristic looking pistol, as well as a magazine appear seemingly out of thin air. He still had his cloaking device on. So, what is this exactly for? I asked, perplexed. It's for the things on the lower floors. Silver is great and all, but some entities aren't all that affected by it. You got lucky with that little guy, but guaranteed injury is far better than chance. I assumed the bullets had been laced with his chemical. Why are you trusting me with this expensive stuff? Can't have a civilian dying on my watch, so stop asking questions and take it. I nodded and accepted the gift, but before we could continue our pursuit, Terry spoke up. I managed to snag the thing's card before it got vaporized. He lifted it up for everyone else to see. It read, High Priority Access, Floor 20. It showed a black star in the bottom center of the card. Megami decided to take another dig at me, apparently. See, I told you they wouldn't have made it so simple. This one must go to the final floor. It seemed no one realized what that meant. That is, until the doctor spoke up in what must have been his actual voice. It was like his British accent, but it sounded shaky, like it was played multiple times over itself and out of sync. You do realize what this means, don't you? They're beginning to send their elite after us. There's something they don't want us getting to, so they're sending their strongest after us in hopes that we won't reach their leader. His voice made me shiver, and the dawning realization that it would be even more difficult from here on out didn't help. Tucker joined in. The top floors had powerful entities on them. They must be trying to corner us. The CO interjected. Then that just means we gotta get to the bottom floor before it's too late. You have your orders, man. He clearly wasn't used to being one of the weakest guys in the room. No, first we find Abraham and Jacob. Then we head to the lower floors to finish off this bastard. Terry was clearly still emotionally distraught. I understood his feelings all too well. Fine. Then that's what we'll do, Your Royal Highness, Jacob mocked. We started again, but just as we did so, there was a nearly silent but instantly fast-running sound from just ahead. Motherfucker, I said under my breath. It came to view as it turned around the corner and suddenly stopped. Well. Seems I didn't have to look for long. They came right to my front door. He was about 6'4", and wasn't lacking in the muscle department, but he was covered in black like a ninja or something. On top of that, he had a sheathed nodachi on his back, and a katana on his hip. Yeah, I'm a sword geek, get over it. He began to pull the nodachi very slowly for whatever reason. Dramatic effect. Next he pulled the katana out, much faster this time, and assumed a fighting stance, wielding the katana like a dagger in his left hand, pointing out the back of it. The ironic part was that he was holding the nodachi like a katana. It's been a while since I've had a good sparring match. Perhaps you can help me. He gestured to all of us. Perhaps I will try the human first. In the blink of an eye, the ninja was only about a foot away from me, bringing his nodachi down on me. I thought I was dead, until the sword bounced off the chainmail, dislocating my arm in the process. He let out a maniacal laugh. Oh, so it is Mithril. How intriguing. I can't wait to put an end to your poor life. With my right hand, I attempted to fire my pistol at it. Then I heard him behind me. Too slow. He slammed the blunt end of the nodachi into my side. The armor absorbed a lot of the shock, but I still felt like one of my ribs were cracked, as I slid about probably 4 feet. I coughed, tasting copper in my mouth. It all happened in about 5 seconds, and by the time I coughed, everyone else was at the ready. The doctor and Rachel tending to my injuries. Oh, you three can remove those cloaking devices. I can see you whether or not you have them active. The soldiers remained hidden. If you want, I can point at each of you so you believe me. He began pointing at 3 different locations whilst counting down from 5. At 2, they decloaked as Terry attempted to stab him. The ninja dodged with ease and sliced off a tentacle in the process. Well, Kenneth, I've seen you've gotten weaker since the last time we met. Terry immediately became aggravated all to hell, becoming taller than I'd ever seen him before. The static was ear-splitting and his inhuman voice spoke over it. No one will ever call me by that name again. No die! Though I could barely hear it over the static, the ninja let out a scream of complete euphoria. "He finally brings out his true form after all this time!" His voice became sinister. "I can't wait to beat the ever-living shit out of you!" That was when their clash began. No one dared to step foot in their direction out of fear of death. Even the soldiers knew this guy was out of their league. Terry swung 6 tentacles at him in rapid succession. It seemed like he was really winning. That was when I noticed it. Not one of the tentacles were hitting the ninja. He was deflecting each one as it was about to make contact with his skin. Hell, the tentacles weren't even managing to touch his clothes. The man continued to provoke Terry. "Oh, come on, Kenneth. I'm getting bored over here. Whatever happened to all that strength you had? How could you lose it in all just 50 years?
I told you not to call me that, Takeo!
His strikes became fast and even more fierce against Takeo. That was when he began whittling down at each tentacle as it struck. "I must say I'm rather disappointed." But just as Takeo got the words out of his mouth, Terry or Kenneth? I'm just going to stick with Terry. Terry slammed a new tentacle into Takeo's side, slamming him into one of the walls, severely denting it. He was bursting at the seams now. "There it is! Oh, he's finally getting serious. I suppose as gratitude, I will grace you with all my power then." I wasn't sure if souls were real. Even when Rachel described how they worked, I was skeptical. But when Takeo's eyes shifted from boredom to that of pure bloodlust, I swear I could see his soul emanating from him for a split second. It was pure malice, hatred. It had a mixture of excitement in it. It was then that his eyes began to glow red. "I will make the first move." I could barely see him anymore, except when he stopped to take advantage of Terry's blind spots. Tucker activated his cloaking device and I assumed he would advance forward. When Takeo's head flung back unexpectedly, it proved my theory. "I suppose I let my guard down. It won't happen again." He punched with such a force that Tucker's cloaking device deactivated just in time for me to see him get firmly planted into the ground. "Stay back! I don't want to see any of you getting hurt from this disagreement." Takeo swung the katana up on Terry's left arm. Unexpectedly, the blade was cut in half, but Takeo didn't hesitate, and immediately began two-handing the Dadachi, bringing it down onto Terry's left arm. But just as his last had, it snapped in two on impact. His proportions were so inhuman I barely recognized him, but his body only seemed to become more durable the longer he stretched. "You should know better than anyone, Kenneth. My weapons are what hold me back." Takeo increased his speed at that point, and I couldn't even process his movements. I could barely even see him when he was standing still, but I gathered roughly what happened based on Terry's movements. An uppercut to his chin. Next came a kick to his side as Terry managed to slow down with his tentacles. Just as it seemed like he would get another attack off, Terry slammed one very thin tentacle down in front of him. He had pinned Takeo to the ground. He looked far less bulky than he had before. He was still in good shape, but seemed to have lost considerable amount of muscle mass. "We all end up dead. For you, though, no one will question why or when." Terry finished off Takeo with one swift movement of another tentacle. As his head rolled away, we saw them. It was Abraham and Jacob.
Well, 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 fancy seeing you here, my dear friend. We heard a ruckus and decided we'd join you. But I see that you've already finished off the bugger,
Abraham said, looking like he'd just been through hell and back. Jacob looked a little worse for the wear himself.
Where is Jeff? Why is he not with you?
Jacob asked. He didn't make it.
Well, let's keep going then,
Jacob said without the slightest bit of hesitation. I whispered to the doctor. I know he's a skinwalker, but that was pretty heartless. He chuckled before shoving my arm back in its socket. "Fuck you," I said through gritted teeth.
This may be a solemn occasion, but we must proceed. We mustn't allow them to corner us. We ran into a security room and noticed that there were stronger-looking entities on the upper floors. We've deduced that they're attempting to back us between a rock and a hard place.
Abraham was rushing through his words. "Yeah." Terry coughed as he began to go back to normal. "We kind of figured that out." He turned towards the doctor. "Hey, Doc, pass me the pills." No, so he gets to call him Doc, but not me? Whatever. There were more pressing matters to attend to. The doctor threw him a small metal canister containing some sort of pills, I assumed. After taking them, Terry shrunk back down to his normal height rapidly, and it seemed to heal most of his smaller injuries. Megami spoke up. "Well, we need to head down right away then." That was when we heard a familiar voice.
"Hey, a little help down here?"
It was Tucker, still firmly planted in the metal floor. Terry reached an arm down, pulling him up with ease. Tucker's breastplate had been cracked to the point of nearly shattering. He pulled a small can of stuff out of one of his small bags, sprayed over the cracks, then wiped away the excess. Cracks were gone.
Ain't gonna be quite as strong since they ain't chemically bonded, but it'll do for now.
"Are we heading down then?" Megami asked again, a little more irritated. The CO was about to say something, but then decided to let Terry do the talking. "I haven't seen anything higher than a level 20 access so far. Even Takeo was still limited to floor 20. I think we can safely assume that that's the final floor. If not, maybe something like a mini-boss floor." No one but Terry and I seemed to get it. Basically the floor of the strongest guys before you get to their leader. That is, if he isn't in another castle. I put up my thumbs, but aside from that, crickets. What I'm saying is there are 3 likely possibilities for the leader. First, he's on the 20th floor, with all the strongest goons. Second, he could have his very own floor, that goes deeper that only he has access to. The third and final option is that he's already gone, or that he was never here to begin with. Everyone understand now? Nods were exchanged before Dexter spoke up.
"How could he see us through our cloaking devices?"
Before Terry could answer him, he shot one of his tentacles at me as my very boring, depressive life flashed before my eyes. But it didn't make contact with me. Instead, I felt a warm ooze trailing down my neck and onto my shirt. I turned to see a lizard person, dead as a doormat. Terry responded after bringing his tentacle back. "It's because his eyes could process every form of light. Your suit only allows light visible to humans to pass through it. Maybe UV as well. That may be why most entities can't see you, since most can see UV radiation. But when something can process all forms of light, it's pretty hard to hide from them." "Well, this is all fine and dandy, but if we stick around any longer, they're definitely going to be catching up with us. We should head out, right now," I said as everyone ready to leave. Apparently my comment was completely unnecessary. It makes sense, but I still like to think I contributed a little to the team's morale. We continued rushing to the next floor, and for the next 3 down, we didn't have too many problems. My right shoulder got dislocated twice and I cracked another rib, but the doctor can work wonders, so I continued on. But on floor 8, we ran into a couple more high-threat entities. Before the fight, I would have assumed, at least 18, they appeared to be a couple, and they looked like demons. Not in the traditional sense, though. They weren't red all over, and they each only had 1 horn. But somehow I just knew they were demons. The pure, unadulterated bloodlust seeping from their glowing amber eyes. The black scales covering their forearms and chins. I could just tell by looking at them that they were beings of pure evil. Jacob and Abraham stood against them. I hadn't seen them fight yet, and I figured I would be useless, so I just stood and watched them in pure awe. "You two reek of death and malice. We shall put your poor souls to rest in the hellscape they belong." Abraham may have looked pretty messed up, but he spoke with the same air of confidence he always had. The woman spoke up. She may have looked young, but she sounded like she decided to smoke 100 pack of cigarettes before meeting us.
"You'll be the one burning in hell, you bastard!"
With that, she charged Abraham, swinging her fist, but Abraham caught it and threw her across the room. The man decided to go for the smaller target, not realizing what a bad idea that was. Just before he punched Jacob in the face, he disappeared into the shadow of the demon. He looked confused until he faced down to see his own shadow smiling back at him. Jacob leaped up from the shadow, attempting to slice off his arms with his. The demon blocked with his forearm, and I heard a crack, presumably from Jacob's arm.
That was unexpected. It appears this guys are pretty good for defense,
Jacob said to the male demon. The demon responded in a similar voice to the woman's, just a little deeper.
"And you are weaker than expected. So much for Jacob, killer of voids. Or my personal favorite, Jacob, eater of black holes." How disappointing.
He punched Jacob in the gut. As he collapsed to the floor, the demon headed towards Abraham.
Well, that wasn't very kind of you now, was it?
Abraham said, quickly pulling his blade from its sheath.
Well, boy, I suppose it's the end of the line for you.
The demon began laughing, which switched to cackling. Apparently he thought Abraham was too weak to fight him, but his expression changed from one of delight to one of fear as one of the lights flickered.
Do you know what resides within the human body?
The demon shook his head.
Complete darkness, which could also be considered... Well, I think you get the idea. Just like the difference between day and night. There's a difference between inside and outside someone's body.
As he finished, Jacob slashed through the demon's body from the inside. Blood and viscera splattered across the room, some of it hitting me in the face. The demon girl tried to limp away, but Abraham caught her by the throat.
Is there an elevator here?
She managed to wheeze out.
Floor 10!
Before Abraham crushed her throat.
You heard the lady. Onwards to floor 10.
Abraham's confidence was sickening by now, unless that was seeing someone completely get ripped open. As that thought popped into my mind, my mouth began watering profusely. Yeah, it was definitely the latter. I couldn't even finish my statement before the contents of my stomach were spewing out of my mouth and all over the blood-soaked floor. Once I finally finished gagging, false alarming, and spitting, I continued, not talking to anyone in particular. Oh, so that's what tips me over. Someone getting split open is the worst thing I've seen all night. Apparently I was getting a little too into it with my brain out loud, cause Terry cut me off. Hey, calm down, Joseph. If we want to get to the lowest floor as soon as possible, we need to attract as little attention as possible. I nodded and jokingly took my best ninja stance, before getting smacked a little too hard by Abraham over the head. Hey, watch it! If you do that again, I'll probably get a concussion.
Well, if you do, the doctor can always just fix you right up,
Abraham retorted. We didn't have to travel much longer before reaching the 10th floor. There were some more fights, but nothing too crucial happened. After arriving at the 10th floor, we asked Jacob to search around since he could travel undetected for the most part. After about 20 minutes and some quick duels that couldn't even be considered fights, Jacob returned.
Follow me. It's nearby.
After a short jog, we all got there with relative ease. The hard part was fitting us all in. The elevator was big, but not big enough. We had it so the widest people/entities were in the back, and the most petite ones were in the front. I say ones, because mostly I had to fit up the front with Megami, the doctor, and Rachel, who had apparently found some new skin to use. Terry was just behind me, so he could still use the badge while standing relatively comfortably. While there may have been a petite row, I couldn't say that anyone but me was actually small, muscle mass-wise anyway. With Abraham crammed in the back with the soldiers, and Jacob hiding in the shadows to save room, Terry scanned the level 20 access card, and we headed down to what awaited us.